Whether you're brand new to astrology or just looking to sharpen your skills, I'm going to be condensing nearly 2 decades of studying astrology down into this one video and teaching you the things I wish I learned when I first began. I've been reading charts professionally for nearly 7 years now, and you can find a link in the description for my website if you'd like to book a reading with me, where I also offer some of my other services as well. We're going to be pulling up our charts in Astro.com. It's totally free and has some features you don't even get with some paid software. The only thing you're going to need is your birth date, time, and location. Now, if you don't have your birth time, I'll be offering some guidance so you can still follow along and read a chart. Now, once you've put in your birth information, I'm going to suggest that you open up the extended chart selection, scroll down to zodiac and houses, and select whole sign houses. This is the system that I use in my own practice. It's actually the most ancient form of reading a chart, and it's really beginner friendly. You are welcome to use another house system if you prefer, and you should still be able to follow along, no problem. Now, before we open up our birth charts, there are 4 main building blocks or components that we should cover. We have the planets, the signs, the houses, and aspects. The planets and signs are pretty self-explanatory. From the moment you are born, the planets are occupying different parts of the sky, and they're kind of influencing the whole chart. Most people only know their sun sign, which is based off the month they're born, but the planets are all going to be playing a part in this story here. The houses, which are the 12 inner spokes of the wheel that are actually numbered in Astro.com, are representing different areas of life. A really easy way to think of all of this is that the planet is like the actor, the sign is like the character that actor is playing, and the house is the area or scene, stage of life that it's all playing out in. Now, aspects are a little bit more advanced. You can probably just get away with looking at the planets, the signs, and the houses when you're first learning astrology, but the interactions between these planets and points are going to determine these geometric lines that we see in the birth chart, and this is going to tell us a lot about how these planets interact with each other. You can almost think of this as the plot of your birth chart. In Astro.com, it's actually pretty easy to see the benefic or easy aspects. These are the blue lines. We have at roughly 60 degrees sextiles, and trines are about 120 degrees. Now, the red lines represent the traditionally malefic or challenging aspects in a chart. We have squares around 90 degrees and oppositions which are around 180 degrees. And the opposition is literally 2 points in opposite parts of the chart. They're kind of competing there. And while you might see a lot of red lines and that could look scary to you, this isn't actually a bad thing. In fact, I often feel that when I see these red lines, it's giving some kind of friction that's helping us really activate our gifts. So you can actually think of these as an opportunity, even if they're a little bit challenging to deal with at first. And finally, conjunctions are when planets or points are within 10 degrees of one another, and they kind of represent a fusion of energy. In general, with these aspects, the more exact or the closer they are, the more potent and powerful they are likely to be in your life. Now, we have our chart pulled up on the screen here, and the first thing that I like to look at is the ascendant or rising sign. This represents the easternmost horizon from the moment you're born, and this is kind of your sense of self. It's the impression that you have on others as you're moving through the world. And this is something that actually changes every couple of hours. So that's why having the birth time is so important. If you don't have the birth time, you can just treat the sun sign as the ascendant for the purposes of this video. Now, in this birth chart, we do have the ascendant or rising in the sign of Pisces. And the ascendant is kind of the first impression or sense of self. And so this person might really identify as a Pisces, someone who's very dreamy, very creative, maybe a little dissociated, a little disconnected, but very spiritual, very attuned on a kind of a deeper level. The ascendant also determines 2 very important pieces of a chart, not just your sense of self, but it's also going to establish your astrological houses as well as your planetary chart ruler. And so as we can see in this chart, the ascendant is in the first house. The ascendant is always the first house. And we go through the subsequent signs using whole sign astrology to determine which sign rules over each house. So we have Pisces in the first house, Aries in the second house, Taurus in the third house, and so on. And knowing this, we kind of have a basic foundational architecture of the entire chart here. So this is really, really important because this is, again, about all of the different areas of life. And you can see on the screen here what each of these houses are corresponding to. Now, the second thing that's really going to be important about your rising or ascendant sign is the planet that rules over that sign. Each of the signs are ruled over by a planet, and for your ascendant or rising sign, this is actually the planet that rules over your whole chart. And it's really going to kind of expand on the rising sign here. So for example, Jupiter is the chart ruler because it's the planet that rules over Pisces. And here we have Jupiter in the Aries second house, which is the house of values and resources. So this person might really identify or be attached with their possessions, or maybe even the things that they create or the things that they value. And this is going to kind of maybe even influence this Pisces rising a little more. Perhaps they're more direct, a little more fiery, a little more passionate. So it adds some flavor and texture. And the house that your planetary ruler shows up in is going to be a very important house for you in your life in general, and kind of shows where you shine or where you naturally gravitate. The second thing my eye goes to is the sun sign. This is the thing that most people know. This is how most people refer to themselves. But I really think of the sun quite literally as the center of our solar system. It's the things that our lives are revolving around, even in our birth chart. And it's also this source of life force energy. And in this person's chart, we have the sun in Capricorn in the 11th house of friendships, social networks, as well as ideals. And being in the sign of Capricorn, this might be someone whose life kind of revolves around building communities, even if that's slow and steady. It might even be something that happens a little bit later in life because that's a little bit of a Capricorn quality as well. But this is a very important theme to this person. The next thing that I look at is the moon sign. Now, the moon sign represents our emotional, intuitive nature, and it might not always be outwardly apparent, but it has a profound influence on our inner workings. The moon does change signs every couple of days, so again, if you don't know your exact birth time, your moon might be in one or of two signs, but if you actually do have an approximate birth time, you can enter in that time and put you in astro, and that will kind of create a hypothetical chart, which should give you a better guess to where the moon might be. Now for this person, we have the moon in Scorpio in the astrological 9th house, which is all about philosophy, travel, higher education. And this is someone who really likes to dive deep, really get to the heart of why people do what they do, and really understand kind of the shadow of other parts of the world. This might even be someone who's a little bit psychological, who really likes to get into the inner workings. And now we have to talk about some of the aspects in this chart here because we do have the moon forming an opposition with Saturn. This is this red line, and this is playing out in the 3rd house of communication, which is also the house of siblings, peers, and your locale. And so for maybe in this person's situation, their emotional nature was either repressed or shunned by their peers or their siblings, and they might have a really hard time expressing themselves, and they might even kind of overly rely on being very cold and detached, because whenever we have a planet in a house, it's really kind of coloring that house. And Saturn in the 3rd house makes someone very serious, very almost like tight-lipped, probably doesn't say too many words, it is very concise here. And Saturn is also forming a trine or harmonious aspect with the sun, which is actually sextiling or creating opportunities with the moon here. So even though we do have this challenging aspect between between the moon and Saturn, we do have the opportunity for growth. And as this person learns about how to communicate and express themselves, it actually does really benefit their social circles. It helps them connect with like-minded souls, which, again, with the sun here, is a huge part of their life purpose. So even though we have this area of friction, it is offering some opportunity and it's catalyzing some growth that's really going to benefit the native overall. And again, on the screen, you can kind of see how these different planets affect us, what they kind of correspond with. And if you're having a hard time while looking at this chart, you actually can go to the bottom left-hand corner. This is going to show you all of the glyphs, what they represent, as well as the signs that they fall in. We even do have the aspects here as well in this table, but that might be a little hard to follow if you don't know what the symbols are for those. I personally prefer to just look at the chart here. Now, as I said before, the houses that have a planet in them are going to be sort of a focal point in this person's life, and they're really going to be influenced by the presence of that planet. But if we have an empty house, for example, the 4th house in this chart is empty, you can always look at the planet that rules over the sign of that house. And in this case, it's Mercury in the 11th house in Capricorn. And so we might figure out that with this 4th house, which is about home, family, roots, this person might feel at home with their friends, maybe even have found family. So this is just kind of a way you can get information about a house that's empty, or even get more information if there are planets in a house. Finally, the thing I really wish I learned when I first started astrology is that all of these different components actually correspond to one another. So we know that Aries rules over Mars, but Aries is also the natural ruler of the 1st house because it's the first sign of the zodiac, which has to do with identity and sense of self, which are very Aresian themes here. And even Mars has to do with drive and willpower. Aries' mantra actually is I am. And so we really learn a lot about the 1st house and even kind of this Mars warrior energy. And even the aspect, the square, corresponds with Mars energy as well, because it does bring some conflict. It does bring some friction, which Mars as a planet does as well. And so we can kind of make inferences between these different parts of the chart, even if we don't memorize all the minute details, which you will over time. You'll kind of learn this gradually, but it's a really good rule of thumb. Now, you probably know more about reading a chart than most people do in the first few years of learning about astrology, so congratulations! I would love to hear in the comment section down below if you learned anything about your chart or astrology in general, and I'd love to hear if you have any suggestions or topics that you would like me to cover in another video. I'm kind of starting a series here, so I would love to get some feedback from you. Again, you can find all of my links in the description of this video. I really appreciate all the support you give this channel. If you've made it to the end, you might as well hit like and subscribe and drop some hype if this was helpful. And I will see you all next time, sending lots of love and blessings your way. Take care.